Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar session. It is called Critical Success Factors for DevOps, What Leaders Need to Know. My name is Alex Mazurek with Quint Wellington Redwood, and I'll be your host during today's session. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few things for everybody who has joined us. First off, the audio is being transmitted by your computer, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. There's no mic needed. And if you have any questions whatsoever, there is a questions pane on the GoToWebinar panel. If you have any questions whatsoever, please go ahead and ask them in that panel. We'll have a designated session at the end of this webinar where we'll answer as many questions as time allowed, and any subsequent questions will be answered via email at a later time. And last off, we are recording today's webinar, so if you need to leave early for any reason, there will be a follow-up email later on in which you will be able to view the webinar in its entirety. So that's a few things about Quint before we get started. This year we celebrate our 25-year anniversary, which is a big milestone for us. But we're a completely global company. We have over 200 consultants delivering projects in 49 countries around the world. Just a few fun facts for us. We train about 30,000 professionals annually in anything from IDLE to Prince 2, COBIT, and some of the newer methodologies out there such as Lean IT and DevOps. And we are the founding members of two organizations, one being the Lean IT Association, and two also being the DevOps Agile Skills Organization. So these are the 6 key areas in which Quint helps. We help organizations organize their IT, blend technology in their business, innovate across their business ecosystems, transform to high performance in their teams, help them be smart with their data, and last off, help them digitize their products and their services. We're lucky today to be joined by Niels Loder. He's an expert in the areas of Lean IT and DevOps. He's the content board lead at the Lean IT Association. He has a lot of experience helping companies in the areas of ITSM, IT performance improvement, Lean IT, and DevOps, of course. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Niels. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Alex. It's nice to be here. Yeah, move straight on to really the first part, and that is what is DevOps all about? And I've filled this screen nicely with a bunch of definitions, and all of them are correct at various levels of DevOps. But do they really help us to take a step further in understanding what DevOps is really all about? To a certain extent, yes, but let's look and see whether we can get a bit closer and specifically look at what it means to leaders of organizations that are adopting DevOps. So let's just go back. What is the promise of DevOps? Where does it start? Well, in the past, what we had was waterfall IT. So what we'd do, we'd have a business process that's improving, that's changing through time. And as IT, we would catch up with that business process development or evolution in fairly big steps. So we'd have releases once every quarter or maybe once every half year, and then we'd get close to what the business process needs, but as time goes by, the business process develops. We then came with Agile, and Agile really got us closer to the business process, the development of the business process, but still we're lagging behind a bit. And really the promise of DevOps is that we generate such a speed within the IT organization that we're able to match the requirements of the business. As that business process evolves, we're developing the IT solutions that support those business processes as quickly as our customers, the business process users, actually develop their business process. So that's really what we're trying to do. And the essence is that we're trying to make it easy for the business to actually work with IT. And the interesting thing is that when we started doing things like Scrum within the development world, we were making it a little bit easier for business to work with us. But in the end, when it came to actually getting the service live, in the live environment, there were still problems. Now what we're saying is we're removing the wall between development and operations. We're bringing those capabilities together together. And actually the result of that is to remove the wall between IT and the business as a whole, because we make it easier for the business to work with us. Now, we were talking about some definitions earlier, and I obviously can't leave you without giving you my definition of DevOps, and I hope it's a nice, easy one that you can remember. For me, DevOps is the ultimate search for flow within an IT organization and between IT and the business. And I'll talk about flow in just a minute, because it is one of the critical success factors. So let's now look at the critical success factors. You're a leader in an IT organization. You are trying to move that organization into the new way of working, into a different paradigm. And there are a number of things that you need to be focusing on. There are a number of things that you can do on a practical basis in interacting with the teams that are in your organization. Okay, the first thing is to focus on flow. And what do I mean by flow? Well, if we look at the top part of the screen, we see activities in a process. And each activity in the process has two basic types of work in it. It has work that adds value to the customer, and it has work that doesn't really add value. Now, for the purists among us, you'll know you'll be missing the necessary non-value add type of work that's in there as well. But let's just focus on the two basic types: value adding and non-value adding. Now, what we're trying to do is identify the non-value add work. We're trying to identify and understand the waiting time between each of those steps. And as you see in the lower part of the screen, the idea is to take those value add steps and put them as close as possible together without waiting time in between, and deliver that value to customers as quickly as possible. And it's very important that you as a leader understand that this is a key goal that you should be looking for each of your processes. It's something that you should be stimulating your teams to look at, and certainly processes that go across teams, you should be looking at how can I remove that waste, and particularly the waiting time between those steps. Why does flow matter? Well, the fact that you're removing waste and the fact that you're putting work more closely together, and you're making sure that it gets delivered in one single flow, means that you will use much less resources. You will deliver higher quality because you're getting direct feedback in that process on what's actually happening in the process. And in the end, flow will ensure that your organization becomes much, much, much cheaper. You can look at it from that direction. You can also look at it from the direction that you will be, for the same price, you will be able to deliver far more value to your customers. And I think that's the one that we should be looking for, because it's that's what our customers are complaining about at the moment, is that we're not delivering enough value in a short enough time. The next step is that we need to look at leadership behavior. The challenges are that you need to have a good idea of where you're going. Now, that may seem a no-brainer for leadership, because obviously you know where you're going, but it's a little bit more difficult than that, because we need to know how to make decisions. And one of the tricks is to look at the decision you have to make and ask yourself, does this contribute to flow in my organization? If the decision and the result doesn't add to flow in your organization, then the chances are you're not making the right decision in the DevOps world. So then we start looking at the organization and defining which behaviors are compatible with the new direction and in the integration of DevOps into your way of working. And this is a little bit more difficult than it seems, because some behaviors may seem productive, but may in the end have a negative effect. So having the drive and stamina to keep going is a real key element of leadership behavior. It's all about making sure that you keep going and keep helping your organization to move forwards towards this new way of working. What are the key behaviors we're looking for? Well, it starts with accountability. It's about you as a leader getting involved and being prepared to explain why you did the things you did. And this is behavior leading by example for your teams. The need to develop yourself, the need to help others to develop. These are all behaviors that are very, very important for a DevOps organization. The next thing is to look at customer-centric action. So are you focusing on delivering that value to customers? And once again, are you focusing on flow to make sure that happens? And last but not least, and maybe this is one of the most difficult things, is to create an open culture. And an open culture is one where we take a good look at the problems that we have and deal with them in a responsible way. We're not ignoring them, but making sure that we're really looking at them properly and deciding which ones we're going to solve and which ones we're not going to solve. The lean world has a very nice has 6 wonderful words that really basically sum up leadership behavior, and that's what you see on the right is go see, ask why, show respect. Okay, this is the essence of the leadership behavior that you need in a DevOps environment. So the third critical success factor is what we call quality at the source. And the quality at the source is making sure that quality has become everyone's business. So it's all about making sure that it's not just some tester or QA person who's told, you make sure that the quality is okay, but it's making sure that every developer, every operations person, every person in that DevOps environment is aware that quality is their business. And as Tom Peters once said, excellence is not a long-term strategy, it's what you do in the next 5 minutes. And I always find that quite a nice quote in the environment of DevOps. It's really about looking, what am I going to do in the next 5 minutes? So leadership must again lead by example by ensuring that there's quality in every aspect of the delivery of services, not just at the end and hoping that it'll go right in the production environment. And we use the statement, create with the end in mind. And this counts very much for the teams in terms of thinking about what is the product I'm trying to deliver. But for leaders, there's a create with the end in mind as well. And what is the end that you're looking for? Well, the end is a high-performance organization that produces value for customers. This means you need to look at a performance-based culture in which you're measuring stuff and understanding what the performance is. But it's got to be characterized by enthusiasm, inspiration, not negativism and looking at problems and getting downbeat or downtrodden by these problems. It's about tackling them. It's about building organizations that are easy to use, easy to navigate, easy for people to find where they need to be. And the same counts for the architecture. Is it easy enough to understand what we're trying to achieve? Now your processes will continually adapt because you're solving problems in your processes. So you don't have a process handbook that's a static document. You have dynamic processes that are developing maybe even day by day, but certainly week by week. And one of the key challenges that you give a high-performance organization is to automate every single manual activity that you can find. And this is all about creating speed. It's about creating the reliability of delivery to the customer. And obviously, as I said at the beginning, having a performance culture means that you measure. You measure, and at a leadership level, you need to have your 7-8 key performance indicators that describe how you're, whether you're achieving your strategy. And in the teams, there will be various metrics that they need to understand in terms of how their product is acting in the live environment and how the customers are using that product. Fourth aspect is we need to solve problems, and we need to solve problems every single day. And again, something that we've kind of borrowed from the lean way of working is a thing called the Kaizen mindset. The Kaizen mindset is all about seeing and prioritizing problems. So really making sure that we understand which problems there are. It doesn't mean we need to solve them all. It means we need to understand how important they are and tackle the ones that need to be solved most urgently, or are most important for us in the delivery of value to our customers. Then we need to go about solving these problems. And once we've solved our problems, we need to understand the lessons that we've learned and share those across the organization, because others can have benefits from those lessons learned. Now, what does this mean? It means that we need to have a structured problem-solving method. And I don't mind which one you use. One of the most commonly used ones is one called DMAIC, Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, Control, from the Lean Six Sigma way of working. But you can also use Plan, Do, Check, Act. You can use Trigo, but have a structured problem-solving mechanism that everybody knows, so people can work together on a daily basis to solve those problems in the same way. There's nothing worse than getting a bunch of engineers together and saying we have a problem, and then having an hour-long discussion about how we're going to solve the problem. And generally that starts with people just throwing solutions at each other before we've really understood what the problem's about. Now, once we've started understanding the problem and we've analyzed it properly, we need to start improving things, which means implementing solutions. That means we need to experiment. We need to try things. Above all, we have to take steps. We have to take action. And yes, we will fail. Yes, things will go wrong. But that's okay, as long as we learn from what went wrong. And as Jez Humble says, if it hurts, do it more often, because as you do it more often, it hurts less and less. And that's a great way of looking at this. It's about taking small steps to remove the problems that we have in our environment. And we have enough problems, so let's start tackling them one at a time. Now, the fifth critical success factor is all about organization. And what we need to do is make sure that we create cross-functional teams that have a clear mandate to deliver value to the customer. Now, how do you do that? You start by defining who the customer is and what the products and services are that they receive. So let's take, for example, an HR department that has maybe 30, 40 people in it, in a larger organization. They have HR processes, and they're trying to get those supported by IT systems. So that's basically what the customer, how we define the customer. We then look at what is the technology stack that supports those products and services. So we're looking at what applications are there, what are they running on, are they running on a cloud service, are they running on proprietary servers, what are they running on? And then we need to define what are the skills that we need to make sure that we completely cover the technology stack and the services that we deliver with those people. Now, obviously, in a practical sense, we're not going to end up with a full stack of people in the team. We may just have application-oriented people, but with knowledge of the servers and network that support the system, so that the team can talk to infrastructure people who have that knowledge and make sure that they keep running their service properly. But it's all about creating that team of people who have sufficient skills to fully support the services that the customer is using. And by doing that, we reduce the dependency on external people, other people outside the team. And this all ensures that we can improve the flow, because we're not waiting for knowledge from outside. We don't need to route our incidents to somebody else to get them solved. We don't need help from somebody else to create most of our changes. And obviously, you will not have all the knowledge you need, but you will be able to do 90% of all the work without having to go outside the team. And this improves the ability of the team to service the customer immeasurably in comparison to how siloed organizations work at the moment. The sixth critical success factor, maybe unsurprisingly, is create an automation toolbox. Now, does that mean you as a leader need to create that automation toolbox? No, please leave that up to the technical people. They're the ones who know what they need to do or what tools they need to use. Your current situation is one where you probably have very complex internal IT processes, supported by spreadsheets, tools that don't quite do the job, etc., etc. And what we're looking for is the creation of a continuous delivery pipeline in which all the aspects are automated. This doesn't mean that you need to choose the tools. It means you need to challenge your teams to create these continuous delivery pipelines. If you look at automation, you've got huge choices. And every month there are new tools coming up. So you need to leave this to the technology guys to choose which of the tools that will best support the goals of ensuring that there is flow of value to the customer. And that's the key thing that you need to be looking at as a leader, is make sure it's the capabilities there. Make sure that your customer or your teams are able to deliver to the customer. Last but not least, and this is probably one of the more important aspects for you as a leader, you're responsible for guiding the way. So make sure you get a map. And if you look at maps in the DevOps world, we basically have three components. There's your starting point, which is quite an interesting area. It's the route you're going to take to get to where you need to be, and it's about understanding the progress that you're making along the way. And let's have a look at those three components. The important thing is that when you look at DevOps, what you see is that organizations start from various points. You may have development teams that are already working with Agile and Scrum, and they need to bring in operations people to help them to create a DevOps team. A different route is that you're starting with an operations team that is managing an application, and you're adding developers to that team. Now, the result may end up being the same, but the journey you need to follow to make sure you get to the right place is slightly different. And the same thing happens on the infrastructure side. What we find is that there are very few explicit infrastructure development teams, and the vast majority of the development of DevOps teams in the infrastructure world actually starts from infrastructure operations. And this is quite a challenge, because what you see is that these people are very used to creating a stable environment and working in faster moving DevOps teams, creating tools for application teams that they can just basically pull off a website is quite a challenge. So really introducing that infrastructure as a code thinking is quite a difficult route to take. Now, the fourth journey is obviously where we're handing over the keys to the infrastructure, to the application teams. And this means that the infrastructure guys have really fully created infrastructure as code services, and are allowing application teams to become more of a full stack DevOps team. Understanding your progress is an important one. We work with something that's called a DevOps integration model. It's a model that helps teams to integrate the two key parts of the DevOps team, so dev people and ops people, but it also focuses on looking at other skills that need to be added, things like security, things like architecture. How do you integrate these into your organization? And obviously you'll start at the lowest level. You'll start with teams that are separate, and in our particular model, level C is where you end up with the initial step to a DevOps team. So in summary, what are the 7 critical success factors? Well, the main success factor is that you as a leader focus your organization on creating an environment in which there is a flow of customer value to that customer. It's important that you look at your own behavior in that respect, and then look at the things that you need to organize. So focus on quality, ensure that there's problem solving every day, organize yourself in cross-functional teams, get those teams to create their automation toolbox, and you make sure that there's a roadmap for getting to where you need to be. That's what I wanted to talk with you about today. Alex, are there any questions?
Yes, Niels, thanks for the great presentation today. We do have some questions in here, so we'll go ahead and tackle some of them. The first one is, how difficult is it to get leaders to change their behavior, in your experience?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, it's quite difficult. One of the things that you see is that leaders don't seem to realize how important this transition is towards a DevOps way of working. It is something that is irreversible. There is a generation of IT engineers who is growing up in this way of working, and they will not want to work in a siloed organization anymore. And I think realizing this should be a wake-up call to all IT leaders to really think about what this DevOps transition really means. The interesting thing I always see is leaders who ask for an executive session, by which they mean, well, tell me about DevOps, but don't spend more than 4 hours telling me. And we do expect our employees, our IT engineers, to spend 2, 3, 4 days or more even understanding what DevOps is all about, understanding the tooling, getting trained up, all these things. That's our expectation. Then we expect them to work differently. And as leaders, we don't do anything. We think that within 4 hours we know what this transformation to DevOps is all about. And that's really where what my starting point is with leaders is, let's sit down and really try and understand what it means to really get my organization in flow. And it's more all-encompassing than it appears, and it means that leaders do realize that they need to change their behavior.
Okay. And all right, I'll rephrase this one a little bit. So Niels, what do you do when leadership starts talking about tooling?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a lot of leaders have obviously grown up through the ranks of IT, and obviously have technology in their blood, and they love to talk about tools. And I've come across this in a number of meetings where the first discussions are, yeah, it's all about the culture, and it's all about the organization, and it's all about process. Oh yeah, and there's a little bit of automation now, and then we get into this big discussion about whether it should be Docker or whether it should be whether we should be using Puppet or Chef or whatever, and discussions that are ultimately quite unproductive. The idea is then to keep taking leaders back to, yeah, but what is the goal you're trying to achieve with this? What is it that you want want your organization to look like? And then the result of that question is, well, it's not about automation. It's about how are we organized and how do we make sure that we deliver the value that we need to.
All right. Thanks for the awesome answers, Niels. In the interest of time, I think we're going to wrap things up. But if we didn't get to your question, it will be passed along to Niels, and he'll respond to you personally, through text, email, if you didn't have your question answered. So just the last thing I want to cover is, if you do want to see more on DevOps, Lean IT, and all the other things that Quint covers, please go out and check out our website. We have other thought leadership up there, everything from white papers to blog posts, as well as upcoming webinars, as well as some of the other things we have out there, such as market surveys, benchmarking, and all the things that can help you get started on DevOps or whatever you are doing. And last off, if you do want to talk to Niels directly, I know he loves talking about this stuff. That's his information right there. Feel free to reach out to him. Thank you all for joining today. I hope all the rest of you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.